Hey guys, it's Tony Thompson. Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. Hey guys, it's Tony Thompson. Welcome back to another episode of Chasing Excellence. I'm excited about today's guest as well as this episode because I am live in Indianapolis, Indiana. I am with John Murphy, who's the Chief Revenue Officer for MJW Mortgage. Perfect. Did I get that right, John?
Yeah, you got it right. Awesome.
Well, look here. First of all, man, I'm excited to be in-house. You know, I've done a lot of reading about your story. We're going to talk about that,
Love that.
the journey of this company.
Yeah.
You know, as an IMBer.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up as an IMBer. I love speaking and talking about IMBs. And so we're going to talk shop here in a few moments. But first and foremost, we're going to let the audience get to know a little bit more about you and your company. So share a little bit more about MJW Mortgage.
Yeah, perfect. So I got started at a young age of realizing I was unemployable. And it's not one of those cool lessons that you think you're going to the top. When you start getting grades and certain things, you realize, man, maybe this work thing is going to be a little harder than I thought, right? And so sometimes when you're younger, you see that pretty quick. So I was blessed enough, though, to be in 100% commission, outside sales, 1099 sales role when I was 19 years old. And I recognized pretty quick that I wasn't like everybody else. College might not be for me, but my mom made me go. And she said, hey, you're going to turn 30 one day, and your wife's probably not going to tell you she's not going to marry a guy without a college degree. So you better get that education. So as I went through school, I started on my journey in entrepreneurship and real estate. And I got started, frankly, right pre-crash of getting and buying single-family homes in my name. No job, no income, no assets. And I started off acquiring properties. And to this day, I still have 37 rental properties and some commercial real estate like this building, a studio. But what I learned really quick is I got to find my niche on what I could focus on. So when I was 23 and going 24, about 10 of my best buddies all became realtors. I said, hey, I'm probably not going to want to be a realtor because all they are. So I was like, what else could I do? Looked around and I was like, I could be a lender, get all their business. So I had the privilege of rolling out pre-TRID, all the other market corrections, all the stuff that made the business really hard and not that cool, and really learned the business as starting off as a mortgage broker, right? It was my business partner now, but I worked for him initially, and we really learned the business by paper 1003, fax and upload, meeting clients in person to collect the pay stub with the scanner. All those arduous tasks is how I really learned the business. So I got in at a young age. And so since 2009, late 2009 to 2010 to present, I've had the privilege of being a mortgage originator and really starting our business, my partner Michael and I, from broker to correspondent and now to fully delegated. And now we're a Fannie seller servicer working on our Freddie and almost there. So seeing the whole life cycle there. So there's a lot to talk about.
Wow. Congratulations, by the way. I mean, that story and that journey, anyone who's been in our industry understands that as we go through these ups and downs, which, by the way, again, you mentioned, you know, you came in right at the point of 08, 09, 10, and for anyone who's been in the industry for a moment, they understand and realize that there was a lot going on back then, back in the day, in that particular time period. So.
No doubt. And also, I think, too, to about it is a lot of people exited the mortgage business, and I think I was just naive. And when you're young, when you're good at sales, you kind of craft your own story about how important you are. And mortgage people are notorious for being egomaniacs when it comes to being salespeople. Most mortgage IMB owners think about the business world as it's like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, and then usually put themselves up there in the Business Hall of Fame. Have you ever noticed that? What I learned the other way is I didn't realize how big of an opportunity it was. So for the most of my career, when we talk about being an IMB through those times, it was just me and my partner cranking loans. And then as time's transpired, and we'll talk about it, is really building a company and a culture and getting into leadership and serving the greater community really drove the bigger purpose of our growth.
Well, and let's dive into that a little bit. You know, one of the things I love is not only are you a leader and you're building something great, but you're also putting people in homes and still originating to this day as well. And so when you look at the marketplace, John, and you know, I say, hey, what does it take for an originator to be successful in today's market? what are the one or two things that they've got to nail day in and day out?
Yeah, no doubt. So one of the hardest parts about being a mortgage originator as someone outside looking in, and then we'll talk about if you're inside already, is that most people downplay the difficulties of success. It's easy to meet an IMB or an IMB owner and be like, oh, it's not that tough, until you get in the space and you have audits going in 3 states, meanwhile still trying to close loans in those states, and there's a lot of complications. So for people outside looking in and considering this as a career, what I always tell them is that it's an inside out game. You have to pick that your goals aren't negotiable when you get started in this thing. Because I'm going to tell you right now, you get dragged through the mud, you get beat up all the time, because it is one of those jobs that is so hard, because how we generate our business, especially as a purchase originator like we are. People are handing you a paycheck and they're saying, don't mess this up. Tony, they're like, hey, you mess this up, you're messing with my money. Not just your money, my money. So there's a lot of things to it. But number one is this, is that you have to be so hungry and have such a burning desire to power through what I call those brick walls. Those brick walls could be, hey, my best friend didn't use me to buy a house. Hurt my feelings. I don't know if I like this, right? Yeah. Hey, a realtor family friend won't refer to me. That hurts my feelings. I don't know how I feel about it, right? So as you really look at it, desire is number one. And then number two is you got to be always a student of this business to learn and get better, because you have to have that self-reflection. And then lastly, you really need to have a community who supports you. Because ultimately, when you get beat up, you got to get picked up with hopefully that team around you to build those skills so that you learn it. Because there's a lot of books that have said this, but the summary of who you are is really the summary of the 5 closest people to you. If your people are sitting in a podcast on a Friday morning in Indianapolis, you're probably raising up the level versus what most people are probably doing. Like, thank God it's Friday. Right? Weekend's almost here. So those are those 3 things that I focus on with our team that really help you to be an originator. But bigger picture, if we talk through about the industry as a large, it's had a lot of headwinds. It's been tough. So yeah, we feel fortunate to be doing well and competing and winning in this market.
Well, one of the things I love about Chasing Excellence is really about helping people to elevate to that next level. There are 2 nuggets that you just mentioned that I think are so powerful. First and foremost, you got to have a team around you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Whether you're a leader, whether you are an originator, whether you're a processor, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Whoever you are, if you're in this business and you're primarily sales oriented, you're going to always need that team to help support you and pick you up on those bad days. And then the second thing, which I'm a very big advocate on, is continuous learning.
Yeah.
That's why the podcast is called Chasing Excellence.
No doubt.
Success in life should never stop. Becoming a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday. And so I love those 2 nuggets. John, let's talk a little bit about leadership.
Yeah.
Our industry right now has a lot going on in terms of it's not 2021 and 22. Yeah. Where, most people had the best years of their lives and their extraterrestrial lives as well. And so being in a competitive market, being in a tight market where loans aren't just falling down the sky requires leadership.
Yeah, no doubt.
As I researched about your organization, I've read your story and I've gotten to know you more. I've seen that you care about your people.
No doubt.
You care about the company and you care about the community. How important is leadership in terms of helping to elevate the people in your organization?
I love that question. So I have 4 little kids and I think about this every day. And I teach them about this. And I said, the first lesson in leadership that nobody really talks about, because everyone likes to think about the leader as the guy in the stage in the front of the room. And I say this to my little boy, because he wants to, be this football, juggernaut and just dominate. I say the hardest lesson in life is realize great leaders start off as great followers. Great leaders lead themselves first, because this idea that somehow leadership is disconnected from doing the most mundane, straightforward task, and I'm above that because of my leadership. A lot of people think leadership is a position versus a task, right? For me, leadership is leading from the front by, I'll never ask my team to do something I'm not willing to do. And I show that by the time I show up in the office. I show that by being prepared for meetings. I show that by how I address customers. Also, how you handle difficult situations. Because the measure of the man is not where you stand when everything's rolling, right? It's not where you stand when everything's good. The measure of the man is where you stand when things are hitting the fan. Like, hey, I'm getting a divorce. I need some help, John. I need to come talk to you about my situation, right? Hey, John, I just had a bad situation in my personal life, right? That's the real measure of leadership. So when you look at the IMB space, back to the difficulties of it is our business is so cyclical from the outside in. Everyone's like, oh, rates are high, you must be doing bad. Rates are bad, or rates are low, you have to be killing it. For us, that is not how we run this business. Because if you run that business, you're chasing the highs and lows. And unfortunately, people who say I've been in the mortgage business is because of the people grinder. Get them in, get them out, move on. And you've seen it, right? People have mass turnover. So for us, what we try to do is no matter what, we try to run this as a sound business model. Whether rates are going up or down, we're always doing well because of our strategy. So back to that piece about leadership, that's a real difficult position as an owner, because that means you got to keep money in the business. You can't have any debt. You got to avoid risk, right? You can't do these things, but we have seen throughout the history of the mortgage space continues to happen. And there's a lot of consolidation and changing of the guard as we speak right now, back to what our model is about, being sound and playing the long game, because it's a wild space to be in when it comes to that leadership.
I love that. Love that. If I'm an originator, John, and I'm trying to elevate to that next level, what's the one thing that you would tell me to focus on in today's market?
Yeah, the hardest lesson I see most originators having is that they're playing too small. Because again, depending on how you grow up, that usually deals with your psychology with money. The analogy I use is this. Most people go to the marketplace in America today, and if the marketplace were the ocean, they go to the ocean with a teaspoon. They get that little teaspoon of water, then they turn around, they go back and, oh my gosh, my water's almost gone. Not recognizing you're in the biggest, baddest economy in the whole world. We have people from the southern border who don't know anyone here, don't speak English, because they're willing to sacrifice their potential lives to get to the United States to work, to sometimes do the jobs that we're not willing to do. People say it all the time, right? They do the jobs they want to do. And they're finding money and wealth, right? I work with a lot of these guys every day. They're my best buds for all my other business, right? They're the hardest working, toughest people ever meet. Yet we have originators who are saying, I can't find a loan, Tony. I can't find a loan, John. Wait, so you're from this city, Indianapolis. You have an iPhone and you can't find a loan? What are we doing? So really when it comes to that, is it's that psychology that most of us are playing too small, and we see people who are successful, we undermine their success. Because the most successful people go through the hardest stuff, and wait for it, they keep going. They keep going, right? You got to keep showing up. So that's what I find, is that it's that psychology, that inside out, that mentality is that they romance what being a salesperson is, and the best salespeople keep going. So when you get a no, they find a yes, right? They won't leave the office till they get a loan. Because the most successful salespeople I've ever met find their way to get there, but they're tenacious with their goals, and they're always negotiating on how to get there, but they're not changing that goal, right? Because that's what I see a lot of people do, is they set a goal, and then halfway through the process, when they haven't even hit the goal, they're negotiating with themselves and calling it short. Hey, I don't know about this business anymore, John, and they kind of change that pulse. So those are my two messages to most people, is that it's going to take longer, it's going to be harder, but most importantly, it's going to be well worth it when you get there, because you're really going to carve out something that nobody can take from you with your referral network and really building this thing up as an originator.
You know, I tell you, man, I love what you just said. One of the things, I call them nuggets, and just listening to you, most people, most originators, they're playing halfway with their goals and opportunities.
Yeah.
And I've always said, if you're an originator and you've been in this business 5 years or 10 years, and you're still at the same level of production that you're doing, or you did 5 years ago to 10 years ago, you need to check yourself.
No doubt.
Because,
And
every year you should be growing you should get to a point where you own your market.
Yeah, no doubt. And let me chime in with that. Like, so for me, what I tell everybody is I'm house poor and I got 4 kids, man. I can't afford to be poor. That's not even I can't come home as being the human ATM for my family. And I'm like, guys, gave up on my goals this year. All that stuff I promised you and I said, that was just a lie. I was just kidding about it, right? So to that point about growth and as an originator, what I truly believe the root issue is this. The average American's productivity has not gone up that much. If you talk about being average, yeah, you're right. Your sales are going to be flat. But to chase excellence and get bigger, you got to have better peer groups. You got to be back to learning. And, sometimes it's going to scare you. But a lot of us have been playing it so safe because we crave this lifestyle that we think that the world is picked by random circumstances, by the movies, by random stuff, versus by the people who show up, do the meetings, get the appointments, and keep doing them every single day, versus this fantasy land that we see on the internet where, oh, I got in there and just went to $1 trillion. I'm the next trillion. No, if you meet these guys, you realize really quick, the most successful people by and large are better and harder working than you are. And that's the secret. They're just better because they worked harder for longer. So I share that because I think it's important as people watch this to be like, okay, maybe it's not the company, maybe it's not rates, maybe it's me and my kind of psychology on how I'm approaching this thing. Because there's a lot of opportunity out there. Money doesn't care where it goes. Volume doesn't care. Units don't care. It's about the person, and it goes where it's deserved, not where it's needed. That's kind of my 2 cents on it.
Love that. Love that. As we look forward in the future, where do you see your organization? Where do you see the company elevating to?
Absolutely. Our model has always been about trying to craft the best place for an originator to work and the best place for an operational employee to work. So it's a dual purpose, employee first, customer second, company third. I truly believe if we can play the long game and watch these things change, that some companies are really still relying on a balance sheet that was built in 2020 and 2021. And that their go forward model is try to buy the markets. And it's not about unit economics. It's about the vanity of revenue and painting the picture like everything's okay, yet they're hardly profitable. So for us, we really want to be that home for the people who are craving that kind of culture where we're big enough to support you with all the products, the technology, all the best resources, but we're small to know you and care about you and provide you things that are unique to you to really support your specific production and your business that is unique to you.
You know, one of the things, and I'm just going to give you a little kudos and shout outs because, you know, I travel the country every week. You're typically 2 to 3 cities, and I'm in and out of a lot of offices. And I can tell when I walk into an office, the culture of consumer in terms of how that company approaches that customer engagement, that you know, customer for life philosophy. And when I entered into your company office, waiting on you, we're chopping up your employees, the person who greeted me, they was just chopping it up to just say, hey man, I want to get to know you. What can we do to help you? And right then and there, I got to feel like, hey, this is a pretty cool place. As a customer, as a consumer, I would love to come here and do business. And I think that's so important in today's environment that people feel that wherever they are and whatever they do, particularly when they're doing business with a very important financial decision, that they want to feel like at the end of the day, you engage, you care about them as an individual, and most importantly, you respect them in terms of wanting them to know that you're here to serve them.
Oh, I love that. And it actually hits the irony of what we're seeing in our space, in the IMB space. How much of a push when you go to our conferences are all vendors are all trying to sell their new technology, and less actual IMBs attend them. But what the irony is to what you just said, customers want that personal connection, right? When we talk through your guys' mission with your role is that people want to know that, hey, does this person care about me? Are they going to help me, right? Regardless of my background and who I am, to get into a home. And that's what I really think is so important about all this. Like even these podcasts like this is expressing that, hey, there's people out there who care. There might be another way that I might not know about. And most importantly, there's hope that, hey, if I have got turned down for a loan, I can get a loan. If I'm an underproducing LO, maybe there's a company that's a better fit for me. Or maybe I'm a big LO who's sick of the corporate trap. I'm ready to make some moves. So I love that messaging. And that's always the goal with our team downstairs.
Man, I tell you what, I have been enjoying our conversation. Before we leave, I always like to leave on a note of gratitude.
Yeah.
John, what's one thing you're most grateful?
Absolutely. Well, number one for me is really right now is my wife. Is, you know, I got 4 kids and she carries a heavy load. I'm one of those guys who wants to do it all. So if you can imagine all the things, I got all these wheels moving, and she truly is the backbone. And then most important for me is just the grace of God, is that every single day I just pray in the morning to say, hey, thank you for this opportunity to live and serve and help the world, because I have so many blessings that I truly don't deserve. And it's only through grace and Jesus Christ helped me out, because I don't deserve many of these things, but I live such a blessed and rich life because of that faith and that real magic of the grace of God.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I tell you what, man, I have loved my time and interaction and the time that we spent. I'm looking forward to coming back to Indy, hearing the story of how you are continuing to chase excellence and how excellence is really at the end of the day, continuing to elevate the company and all its employees. And most importantly, the impact that you're making and the markets you're serving. So, John, I appreciate you for joining me today on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you greatly.
I'm Tony Thompson. Guys, thank you for taking and hanging out with us for another episode of Chasing Excellence. I look forward to seeing you on our next episode of Chasing Excellence. See you soon.
Whatever is necessary. Chasing excellence.